So this is Baruch. I'm here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. I am the soon-to-become sub of this Kollel because I just passed into that age category, and it just happens like that. So let's just see what we have to say here. Yaakov Kronenberg is a person that has been searching for the truth for many, many years. He has a very similar background to me, and our birth charts are similar in some ways also. He's born one day before me. I'm older than he is, but not the same year. He was born April 30th. I was born May 1st. He is a Capricorn rising, and I'm very close to a Capricorn rising. I'm either a Capricorn rising or an Aquarius rising, but these are both Saturnian planets. So something we're going to learn about Saturnian planets as we go through this, because a lot of Kabbalists do have this characteristic. So this is Jewish astrology, and here's where we're coming now. The basic model of the universe. That's what he's talking about. I'll leave it up. I'll leave this up high. So we went through, and he told us some of his background, and his background is similar to mine. I was a graduate student, and there was nothing there. I found Torah, Baruch Hashem, and I realized that there's really something there. So that's what happened to me, and I had the ability to learn at Baruch Hashem in the right situations, and I did. And I went to yeshivas in different kinds of places. Now that's what happened to him, except that he went to Eretz Yisrael. But not only that, but on his way in his trip, he ran into this Mr. Mason. So this Zoltan Mason, probably a Holocaust survivor who was an excellent astrologer, Jewish astrologer. So this is like the link that he has. Now we're coming over here, and we read as much about his background and how they were all the people that were associated with this Mr. Zoltan Mason. He had other students, and they all were trying to regurgitate, or recreate, that is, or get into, investigate, what's the right word, all these ancient different types of astrology. Now, let me just pick up where we left off. He says, one may ask then, was there ever a Jewish astrology? If there was a Babylonian one, and there was a Roman one, and there was an Arab one, and and Greek one, and if so, what is it all about? They did, however, cite one book from Jewish sources, which is the beginning of wisdom, Reshus Chachma, written by Ibn Ezra, which is a great book, but not a true representation of Torah's astrology, and it revolved almost completely around Western astrology, basically from Western influences, as well as Arabic and some Indian astrology. And in some sense, it wasn't really a Jewish book, and that seems to be the way the astrology community in the West works. They think that the only book about Jewish astrology is the book of Rabbi Ibn Ezra, which is about Western astrology. So what he's saying is like this: in the yeshivas and the places of study Torah, they used to say, you want to know something about astrology, go to the Ibn Ezra. But they themselves, that is, the heads of the yeshivas, are not over there, not thinking about that. So they didn't really examine, is it really talking about astrology, or is it talking about our astrology, or someone else's astrology, or just astrology in general, which he says is Western astrology. Now he says, I have a friend who went to St. John's University. He had a special educational program there for 4 years, studying the great, most prized books of Western civilization, about 100 books. And he showed me that the university's approach took a similar line. Very few Jewish books. When I looked at the list, I noted that they included only 2 Jewish books, that the Bible, which is what we call Tanakh, which includes the prophets, etc., and a book by Maimonides called The Guide for the Perplexed. How could it be that nobody heard of Jewish writers during the millennium? Nobody, no Gentiles, or I guess, have ever had any exposure to Jewish writers. This era, which spanned from about the conclusion of the Talmud, which is like what would they be, like 1,500 years ago or more, up to the time of Spinoza and Karl Marx, Sigmund Freud, and so on, which is around the 1700s and 1800s. An era when Jews came out of the ghettos. What did Jews write about during the years in between, during the Middle Ages? That you don't seem to hear much about them is interesting to note. Why only 2 books in the university's top book list? Even the Bible. I thought that one reason was why the university put the Bible on the list is that even though the Bible is a Jewish book, the Christian religion holds that it was taken away from the Jews and given to them and became a Christian book. As for Maimonides, people know Maimonides as a great writer, and it is known that many Jews study Maimonides' legal works, such as the Mishnah Torah. So they put one of his books in the list too, but they chose the Guide to the Perplexed, which is a book that basically few religious Jews read, and in Western philosophies, and is Western philosophy oriented. So just as is done at the university, so in the Western astrology community. Unfortunately, they think that Judaism only has the book of Ibn Ezra on astrology, that the Jews had no astrology of their own. Now, it seems to me that Rabbi Yaakov, after meeting Mr. Mason, he really learned something very, very powerful that few people knew. But if you went to the regular schools of Torah study, you would say that none of them knows this. So this is his quest to make it available to us. So I want to try to fill a little bit of this gap here, and I would like to teach some Jewish astrology, its sources and where it differs from Western astrology. I would like to talk about how the Jewish religion sees Jewish astrology, especially the connection between Jewish astrology and Kabbalah. The question of which does where does the Jewish astrology fit in with Kabbalistic thinking? Then we can talk about Kabbalah itself. Now he's going to. So we're going to get some real lessons here that are going to be very nice. Let me lift this up a little bit. When I grew up, I had never heard of the Vilna Gaon and the Maharal of Prague, the Rizal and Rebbe Moshe Cordovero. I didn't know about the existence of their books until I was in my mid-20s. So we are going to talk about this gap and try to fill it, as well as about how the Rizal interpreted the Zohar, and about the teachings of Reb Moshe Cordovero and some other great Kabbalists. Now, we have some really nice stuff here. And we are going to talk about the Oriental rabbis, but most of the Kabbalah study today actually comes from the Oriental rabbis. That means it's Sfardim, based on the teachings of Rabbi Sholem Sharabi. Now, Rabbi Sholem Sharabi, I really should have gotten a little bit more about him off the internet, but he came from Yemen. He was supposed to be like a continuation of the idea, this is the Rishash, that was a continuation of the ideas of the Shar Kavanos of the Ari, because he died young. And so this was to bring the flush, to really spread out the Kavanos and really give us a much more detailed idea. This man came to Israel from Yemen around the time of the American Revolution and taught Kabbalah. So that was a lot. He was a great Kabbalist. So as a start, I would like to talk about the basic model of the universe, and here it comes, and the difference between the Kabbalistic model and the Western Indian models of the universe. So when you look at old astrology books, like ancient Greek, Roman, and Middle Age books, you see they looked on the Earth as the basic model, with all the planets and stars surrounding it. So now imagine you're standing in the middle of everything. So moon above Earth and then Mercury. So let me see, I think I skipped something. Did I skip something? Okay, so they said the moon above Earth and then Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So this is how they saw the order of the planets. They were all surrounding Earth, as according to those books. We'll talk later about why they didn't mention the modern planets like Uranus, Pluto, and that that maybe they knew about them, but didn't want to mention them. So that's another theme that he has in this book. But this is for another lesson, he says. They held that each planet was going around along its sphere. Now, let me, if I've read that what. They were going around along its sphere. In other words, they had an orbit. Each orbit or sphere was one above the other and one bigger than the other. In other words, a bigger circle. Above these 7 spheres, there was an 8th sphere, which was the sphere of the fixed stars. And above that was another sphere, the 9th sphere, which the Jews called the Galgal Hayomi, the daily sphere, or the daily orbit. Now, it's hard to, all of this stuff is all new. But it actually did a complete circle around the Earth in one day. It was also called the blank sphere. There was nothing the eye could see in it. In other words, not visible. It was also called the white sphere. So we're going to stop right here. This is going to be the shir for today, but there's going to be a lot of stuff here. The next, for a person who's really interested in learning secrets, he's going to show you some. This is Baruch Fleischman, Tikkun Elevator Kollel. I am becoming your Saba.